This is episode number 43 of Hitting for the Cycle. I'm Ryan Touhey, and I am once again joined by Tom Albano. And Tom, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Trade deadline has come and passed, and our Yankees made one big move, and so far it's resulted in a little bit of a turnaround since that month and a half long debacle, let's call it. But we'll see how it goes. I mean, we're in the dog days now. We're in August, so this is the start of that last big push to the postseason.
Yeah, last week things were so bad that it got to the point where I stuck a loose leaf paper to my forehead that had the word loser written on it. I was really reaching a breaking point, and I did reach a breaking point.
You
But
did, but they managed to salvage themselves in some degree. They should have had 2 sweeps, but Clay
yeah.
Holmes gonna Clay Holmes. But
Mhm.
5-game win streak, can't complain.
Well, hopefully for my sake, I don't need to wear that sign again for the rest of the
Yeah, no.
season. But but yeah, the Yankees finally look like they are breaking out of that slump for good, and hopefully they keep it up this weekend. It's the start of a long homestand for them, and hopefully they can keep the momentum that they had from this past weekend going into this week. We got a lot to talk about. Obviously, the trade deadline is over. A lot of moves were made, and we're going to talk about all of that. But before we do, we just want to remind everybody to follow Hitting for the Cycle on Facebook, X, and Instagram at HFTC Follow the Empty the Bench Podcast Network at ETB Network. Follow our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ETB Network. You see it right here down below on the graphic. And
Yeah.
finally, listen to us
Just
on whatever platforms you listen to your podcasts.
yeah, I just wanted to plug for a second, Ryan. We just passed, I think, 815 subscribers on the YouTube end.
No
So,
kidding.
yeah,
Awesome.
we're climbing that climb to 1,000. Might be coming to a head sooner than we think, which
All
is
right. That's awesome to hear. I'm glad about that.
Uh, meanwhile, Empty the Bench and Hitting for the Cycle and the rest of the Empty the Bench podcast network is all as always is presented by Playback. Watching sports is more fun with others, but we spend too much of our time watching alone. Playback is a virtual space where communities can stream live sports together with everyone perfectly synced up. Creators can hop on stage, deliver their own play-by-play analysis and commentary, and invite viewers up for Q&A. Playback makes watching sports fully interactive and a social experience. From playing fantasy sports, repping your favorite players and teams, and watching with the commentators and communities you care about. Win or lose, sports are best enjoyed together. Join our community by going to playback.tv/ETV network to find out more, including our live stream schedule. As been teased on previous ETV shows the last couple of weeks about an expansion of content over there. Sam Bando and I from the MMA Outsiders did Fight Study. We've been doing a lot of Olympic basketball. I know Ben, who's not with us today, actually, the day that this is airing, did a stream with Nick for game 3 of the men's action. And we will do, I know what is confirmed is we're going to do uh the men's knockout stage start on Tuesday, time to be determined. So yeah, big things happening over at Playback.
Yeah, pretty exciting. I've been watching the Olympics pretty intently this year. It's actually the I haven't really gotten into the Olympics in recent years, but I've gotten into them pretty good this year. So it's been interesting.
And
So
as
yeah. Let's get into what we have to talk about. So obviously, we're Yankee fans. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the Yankees' biggest trade deadline acquisition, which was acquiring infielder slash outfielder Jazz Chisholm Jr. from the Miami Marlins. So the Yankees acquired Chisholm, and in exchange, they sent over 3 prospects. They sent over catcher Augustine Ramirez, who was one of their more highly touted prospects in their farm system. He was the Yankees. He was one of the Yankees' top catching prospects.
Mhm.
They sent over infielder Jared Cerna and infielder Abraham Ramirez. So those 3 got sent to the Marlins in exchange for Ramirez, or in exchange for Chisholm. I'm sorry. And Chisholm, I said it in a couple of episodes ago. I was very, very hesitant for the Yankees to go out and get Chisholm. Chisholm has just always never really stood out to me, to be honest with you. I always called him or referred to him as the bling bling man, meaning that he was all show and fashion and never really materialized out as a baseball player in general. All I said that he had a show for his career was being on the cover of MLB 23, the show. So I had some pretty harsh words for him, to be honest, as I mentioned in a couple of episodes before. But Chisholm so far has gotten off to a great start with the Yankees. He became the first player in Yankee history, if I'm not if I recall, to have multiple home run games in I think his
His
first three
first
or
four,
four.
right? Yeah,
I'm sorry.
his first 4 games.
First 4 games, yes. He's already had 2 multi-home run games, one of which was huge on a Tuesday night against Philadelphia off Matt Strahm that propelled the Yankees to a comeback. When the Yankees at the time were trailing 4-2, he had a big 3-run home run down the right field line that gave them a 5-4 lead. Eventually, of course, Clay Holmes came in and blew the save because why not? And the Yankees had to win that game in extra innings, but that was one of 4 home runs he's already hit as a Yankee. Granted, another one of them was off a position player, but so far, Jazz has looked good because, of course, when I say I'm not crazy about somebody, they do well. So it's nice to see him get off to a good start. And so far, it seems that the vibe has changed a little bit around the Yankee clubhouse, and players are embracing having him. Fans are embracing having him. He definitely has. They've definitely embraced his personality with all the celebrations that he does when he's rounding the bases. It's just never really been my cup of tea growing up. I was always taught whenever somebody does something such as hitting a home run, you round the bases and you just touch home plate and you just get high fives or fist bumps when you get to the dugout. That's just the way I was raised. I've never been crazy about
No,
bad
that
steps and
that
celebrations.
was the way I was raised too. That was what I was taught. It was just about staying humble and just running the bases and such. But you know what? It's part of the game now. I know that's been a big controversial point in the modern baseball era, but that's just how the game is now. I mean, if you look at MLB 24, the show, since you're going to bring up the
Mhm.
video game, like it's now a part of it. Like when you hit a home run, they have a whole thing about, what you want your home run celebration sequence to be.
Yeah, it's a bit much, but and like you said, you're right. It is a part of the game. It is a big part of the game now, and the fans, for the most part, most modern baseball fans nowadays, do enjoy the celebrations. They like the bat flips. They like the helmet tosses. They like all that wonderful stuff. I never really cared for it, and I think it's probably going to stick with me for life. It's just who I am. But that's neither here nor there. I'm not saying Chisholm needs to change what he does. He's the one who's playing the games. I'm not. I'm just a fan, so I'm not telling him to change. But regardless, it's nice to see him get off to a good start. And yeah, I know that a lot of fans right now are ecstatic with how he has played so far. But let's just take it down a notch here. It's only 4 games. And we still have another 2 months left to go in the regular season. So I'm just hoping that Chisholm, hits consistently. I hope he, plays good defense. I was impressed with the way how he handled the media when they asked him what his thoughts are about playing third base, considering that he had never played there during his professional career. And Chisholm, to his credit, he did say, I will play wherever they put me. I just want to help the team win. So I will
Mhm.
give him props where it's due. He definitely showed that he's a team first guy, and he looks pretty good at third base. In Philadelphia, he made the plays look. You never would have thought that he had never played at third base before in his career, and prior to watching that, he looks very smooth. He picked up the ball pretty. He fielded the ball very cleanly, has a very smooth delivery to first base. So it was just a natural transition for him, if you ask me. He looks pretty good. So that kind of put aside my worries of him playing third base. Obviously, Chisholm came up as as a middle infielder. He had experience both as a shortstop and a second baseman during his early years with the Marlins. They eventually shifted him to center field, and now he is moving to third base, where I think he's going to be playing the majority of the time with the Yankees for the rest of this season. Obviously, DJ LeMahieu has struggled all season long, and LeMahieu basically is coming in as a reserve player in the later innings of a game. And the Yankees outfield is just too crowded now with obviously Verdugo, Soto, and Judge, and probably Jason Dominguez coming up at some point later on this year. Possibly, maybe
I
not.
was gonna say, I feel like the fact that they only traded for Chisholm and they got a little bit of relief pitching without changing much of the logjam. I've got a feeling that unless something happens in the last couple of months, maybe tells me they're not gonna try and rush Dominguez back. That they would rather just let him play this year out in AAA and try again next spring training.
Well, I mean, it may not be the worst thing. It depends really on how the team does, down the stretch. If the team is slumping again, and they need to get some energy, then I think there's a very good chance you'll see Dominguez down the road. But if they keep up with the way they're playing right now, currently as of the day of this recording, they're on a 5-game winning streak. If they keep it up and they're able to pull ahead of Baltimore in the standings and they start to build a lead, and then eventually, things just start to fall into place for them. Then yeah, I do agree with you that things will just stay the way they are, and Dominguez won't return till next season.
The
But
question is if they somehow do bring Dominguez up, where are you gonna fit him in the scheme of things? Because right now, I mean, it's already enough that you have a log jam with Jazz because MLB Network, the day of the trade deadline, they had this really funny graphic. They'll have the cute funny graphics from time to time, and it's like, well, if you put him in the outfield, well, either Verdugo, Judge, or Soto goes to the bench. If you put him at third base, like you mentioned, LeMahieu or Oswaldo Cabrera is probably on the bench. Put him at, you know, shortstop, then Volpe's going to have the day off. Put him at second base, Gleyber's going to have the day off. First base, it's Ben Rice. You could just throw him to the DH, but then there goes Stanton, who just came back from injury himself. So at this point, it brings up a whole question because, like, I mean, who are you going to DFA if if Dominguez comes up? Because on one hand, Gleyber Torres, I think Gleyber, and we'll talk about Gleyber in just a second, he kind of sees the writing on the wall. Gleyber's not going to come back at the end of this season. On the other hand, and I can't believe the Yankees weren't able to find anything for him. But on the other hand, like as you mentioned, DJ LeMahieu I know he had the 6 RBI game on Wednesday, but other than that, it's been a struggle ever since his spring training injury. Oh, ever since really him him trying to play through the injury at the end of 2021.
yeah, I mean, you make fair points there. I mean, yeah, DJ finally had a good game this year. He had 6 RBIs. I think that's the most RBIs he's not only had it this season in a game, but in his career, if I'm not mistaken.
At least in
Um,
his Yankee career, yeah.
yeah,
Which,
I
by the
mean,
way, the other caveat to all this is DJ LeMahieu still has 2 more years at $15 million, which, if you remember, when he signed that extension with the Yankees, I mean, people were clamoring that he should have been in a triple digit and only got $90 million. So could have been a lot worse now than the 15 million they still owe each of the next 2 years.
yeah, well, I mean, people have been calling for DJ to be DFA'd all season long, basically. I mean, because he's been that bad. I mean, he's been well below the Mendoza line for all this year. He's really struggled to make solid contact with the ball. He grounds out way too much, and it's really been hard to watch. And it sucks because I love DJ. He
I
was one of
did
my
too.
favorite. He was one of my favorite players in like 2019 and 20. He was my favorite guy on the Yankees, and
I
to
love
see him.
watching him back in Colorado.
Yeah, to see him just go through the struggles over the past couple of seasons has really been tough. It's like watching your favorite superhero just die in front of you, basically. But
So
but
I just wonder how the chemistry so far has been great. It's just a matter of trying to plug Chisholm in, every way which possible. Because as much as I'm against some of the things that Booney and the front office do, they're going to give a day off to everybody every now and again just because they can.
well, yeah. I mean, I guess one thing that you could do, just because given his injury history and the fact that he just gets hurt so easily. Look, Giancarlo can only play a few games here and there at this point. You can plug him in the lineup on a day, like 3 games in a row, I'd say, or something like that. But then give him a day off because it's not worth at this point in the season for him to blow out his hamstring for the 10,000th time. So if you bring up Dominguez, play Dominguez, sporadically, here or there. You don't have to play him on a daily basis because we already got 2 months left of the regular season, anyways. It's not a guarantee that even if he were to come up, he would be on the postseason roster. So I guess one thing that you could do, only rotate between him and Giancarlo. And when the days you take out Giancarlo, you can put Dominguez in the lineup, and then you can give either Judge or Soto a day at DH or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Which,
like I
by the
said,
way, I, which by the way, I did forget. No, they could wait till September when 2 more roster spots open, which could save things. You just gotta hope we get there.
yeah, I was also going to bring that up too. But yeah, I mean, going back to Chisholm quickly, I mean, it is what it is for me. like I said, I'm glad to see he's gotten off to a good start. I'm still, taking it with a grain of salt that this is a very, very small sample size. We still got two full months left of the regular
Hmm.
season. But, you look at the trade deadline in general and you look at the players who were, available at the deadline or whose names were being thrown around. There weren't necessarily that many great offensive upgrades. I mean, Chisholm was probably one of like only a few bats that really stood out in, changing a team at the deadline. So I guess if you look at it that way, the Yankees, they probably did get a good deal.
They did.
Yeah,
I think they did, and you know, Navarez. I mean, pardon me. Who was the backup?
Ramirez.
Ramirez. Yeah. I mean, look, we talked about it with the catcher situation. Like they have a lot of catchers. They have a lot of outfielders in their minor league system. They don't have guys like a Chisholm who, like you said, they never really played third base before, but are such great utility guys that you can plug them in because right now the position of need is the corner infield. And that's another thing that might save DJ is that because of Rizzo being hurt and because you DFA'd JD Davis, you only for the only solid first baseman you have right now are LeMahieu and Ben Rice.
Yeah, and we're not 100% sure if Rizzo is going to be coming back this
I
season.
don't think he is.
Yeah, I mean that would be a sad way for his Yankee career to end with an arm fracture. But I
That
mean,
might just be how his career ends. I don't know if anyone's going to give him a flyer during the off season.
it could be. I mean, Rizzo was having a pretty bad year before the injury as well. Although he was kind of swinging the bat a little bit better right as that injury happened. But I haven't really heard any updates regarding his status, where he is in his rehab, where he's at in his rehab. I don't really know exactly if things have been moving as slowly or progressing as well as they should have during his rehab. So we'll see if he's able to come back within the next 2 months. But even if he were to come back and the Yankees make the postseason, which in all likelihood they will, I'd still stick with Ben Rice at first base over him.
Yeah, no, don't. And this was kind of the problem with some of the earlier Yankee seasons where the young guys were coming up, and then when the older guys with the contracts came back, and then the team slumped and struggled. We got to ride the hot hand at this point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you can't take a risk anymore because you just don't know what you're going to get with Rizzo. He's been inconsistent all year. He obviously this was a significant injury. I mean, who's to say that his swing won't be painful for him if he were to come back? I mean, he fractured his arm for God's sake.
Mhm.
So
Who's
it's
to
not a
say he
risk.
can't make? Who's to say he can still make the big stretches at first base?
And he's had a bad year at first base. It's been his worst year defensively easily. He's had a hard time scooping up some of these throws that he's had no problem doing in years past. Rizzo has always been a great defender, but this year has been a struggle. He's had a hard time making some simple routine ground balls, and like I said, he's had a hard time making the scoop at first base and picking it there. And it's been tough watching Rizzo too because I love Rizzo, but he's had a bad year too. So you can't afford to play with fire here. You got to ride the hot hand, like you mentioned, and I would definitely stick with Ben Rice. I mean, Rice has definitely cooled off since he first came up. Like I said, he came up and he just was tearing the cover off the ball. He obviously had that 3 home run game against the Red Sox, and
Mhm.
obviously he's come back down to earth. But that was going to happen. He's a rookie.
Yeah,
He just came
that's
up here.
rookie.
Yeah, that's a rookie for you.
That's
So
I talked about that when we talked about Paul Skeens 2 weeks ago. I said that's rookies.
yes, so Ben Rice, for the most part, has done a very respectable job, and you hope that he just continues to hit as good as he can. I don't expect him to tear the cover off the ball for the next 2 months. I'm just hoping that if he can hit somewhere around 230 or 240, sign me up for that. And hopefully he's able to do that. His defense has been very good. I haven't really been too concerned with him at first base. He's for the most part he's played the position very well, and DJ. Obviously, fans have been calling for him to be DFA'd, But I'm kind of okay with the role the Yankees have him in, coming in late in the game as a defensive replacement. I'm okay with that for the most part, although he did almost cost the Yankees on Tuesday night when that scorcher was hit to him off the bat of Bryce Harper and the ball went in the air and Torres had to come over and field the ball and flip it to Holmes at first base. That also was a little too close for
That
comfort
was a
for
little,
me.
I guess I give that one a pass because I mean it's Bryce Harper. Of course
It
he's going to
is
get a
Bryce Harper,
breaking
and Bryce
ball.
Harper hits screams liners off his bat. But yeah, Jazz Chisholm, like we mentioned, good start for him. Hopefully he keeps it up. But yeah, I mean, I'm taking it a little bit with a grain of salt, but I will say the Yankees definitely needed to add more athleticism to their roster, and he does provide that, and he's very fast. As we saw over these past couple of games, he's fast as lightning. He stole that base against the Red Sox after taking an elbow to the jaw at Fenway when he was trying to
Oh, my heart dropped when that happened. I'm like, no,
when
tell
that
me this.
happened, I just chuckled. I'm like, of course this happens. Why wouldn't this happen? But I will say this. In his 4 games as a Yankee, he's already showed that he's a better trade deadline acquisition than Andrew Benintendi was in his month and a half stint as a Yankee.
Oh, my heart breaks on Benintendi on that one.
Oh, I was so freaking mad. So mad when that injury happened. You have no idea.
Uh,
I'm still mad.
I know my heart break. Like I said, my heart breaks for Benintendi. I want to see. By the way, I just want to see Chisholm at one point at least lead off for the Yankees at some point because that I thought was the expectation that he was going to be kind of a lead off hitter to help with, you know, Judge and Soto while the offense was down. But I mean, I guess he's finding the role that he has been because things have been okay with him as a 5-hole hitter
Well, I think they're going to stick with what they've got right now for a little while longer. I mean, you've
with
won a
Verdugo leading off. Yeah.
Yeah, and Verdugo has finally looked like he's swinging the bat better. Verdugo has been playing much better in recent games, and hopefully he keeps it up too. So now let's move on to Gleyber Torres. And Torres had some pretty strong words for the media in regards to him possibly maybe moving to third base. While Jazz Chisholm was open to the idea, Gleyber Torres was not, basically shooting them down right then and there, saying, I'm a second baseman. And right then and there, everybody was just cringed and obviously going after Gleyber, understandably so, because Gleyber has had a tough year. And Gleyber is not probably, definitely the worst fielder in Major League Baseball. I've never seen a second baseman struggle with more routine ground balls than Gleyber Torres. I think he has 14 errors on the season, which is
Yeah.
by
14.
14 errors, which is by far the most by any second baseman in Major League Baseball. Every time a ground ball is hit in his direction, I tense up and I hold myself and I'm like, oh my God, please make the play. Please make the play. That's a feeling you never, ever want to have. But
No.
Torres, I can't help it. He bobbles. If you were to hit Gleyber Torres 10 ground balls, I'd say he would field the ball cleanly 7 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
7
Pretty
out
much.
7 out of 10. That's not good. 70% is not good enough. It needs to be 9, I'd say. It needs to be at least 9. You hit him 9 ground balls, standard ground balls. You got to field it out cleanly at least 9 out of 10 times.
And that's the thing. You know, on one hand, Ryan, like I absolutely want to torch Torres for this because, you know, it's not the thing to do. It's not the thing. He does not have a leg to stand on when he has 14 errors, the most in Major League Baseball this season at second base. On the other hand, because he's struggling so much at second base with the routine ground balls, why would I want him as a third baseman? Like I don't understand that. And by the way, to this day, Ryan, I still say the Yankees' attempts to have him um succeed Didi Gregorius at shortstop after Didi had saved the postseason, him Gleyber struggling for 2 seasons as a shortstop kind of ruined him.
It probably did. I mean, Gleyber has just never been a strong defender ever since he came up to the big leagues, whether it would be at shortstop or at second base. Defense has just never been a strength of his. He's always been an offensive first guy. And yeah, I mean, when he was at shortstop, he always had a hard time reaching first base. But now at second base, he just has a hard time fielding balls. So it's like it's a lose-lose situation here. Like maybe you're just not a defender at all, or you're not an infielder. Maybe you should just go to the outfield. I don't know.
Yeah, let's just create more of a logjam. Why don't we?
I mean, at this point, I really don't know where the hell you put him.
No.
And I mean, if he's not willing to move to third base, I mean, then that shows me that number one, you're not a team player. Right off the bat, you're more about yourself than anything else. And number two, it's just it's just a mess at this point. Like we mentioned with Torres, he just has not had a good year at all. This is a contract year for him, obviously. He struggled with the bat, and I think he's carried it onto the field with him as well. And it's just not an ideal situation. Torres has just rubbed a lot of Yankee fans the wrong way this year with the way that he's played. I mean,
And the body language. I kind of hinted. Sorry, Ryan. I kind of hinted at before, but the body language of him. Every time Jazz is doing something good, he knows the writing's on the wall. He knows Jazz is going to replace him next season.
Well, I mean, with Jazz, yeah, I mean, the Yankees could have him move over to second base next year. They have a solution right then and there. So it's a little concerning for me because if because of that, because we got Jazz, and he knows that the Yankees are not going to be interested in re-signing him in the offseason, is he going to give it his all down the stretch? I mean, Torres is one of those players where you can tell a lot of it is mental, and he gets in his own head, and he eventually just becomes his own worst enemy and just has a hard time concentrating and just makes these ridiculous plays in the field. He's also had a hard time running the bases this year. He's never really been a good base runner to begin with, but yeah, Torres is one of the most polarizing Yankees in recent memory, and this was the last thing that should have came out of his mouth. He should have done what Chisholm did. He should have said, he should have owned up to it. He should have owned up to the fact that I've been crap at second base this season and I've had a tough year. So whatever is best for the team, I just want to win the World Series. When you're a Yankee or when you're on any team in general, your mentality should always be, I want to win, and I'll do whatever it takes to help the team win, even if you truly do not mean it deep down inside, that you're not happy about moving to third base or playing a position that you're not familiar with or comfortable with. You should always, say I'm doing whatever's best for the team.
It's media relations 101 as an athlete.
Just lie. I don't care. But don't say it. Don't say it straight to the media. I mean, yeah.
Well, Gleyber said the second worst thing in MLB this week. The worst thing is saved for a little bit later.
Well, actually, that would be this. Actually, I would say this is the third worst thing. The first worst thing, like you said, we'll talk about in a little bit later on in this episode. The second worst thing was probably Anthony Rendon saying baseball is not a priority for me during the off season.
Okay, you're throwing the off season in there. Yeah, I guess Rendon's comments have to be up there then. That might actually end up being one.
Well, I mean, I spoke about that a while ago with Ben Kruse, and I had already given my opinions about that, saying basically that that's fine, that's completely fine. It shouldn't be your biggest priority. I mean, obviously, personal life should come first. This is completely off topic with Gleyber. And,
yeah, Anthony. Actually, you know what? Anthony will be saved for the end of the show when we talk about the Angels.
Oh yeah, we got something else that we need to talk about. But yeah, Torres, it's not what you want. No, you gotta be smarter than that. And unfortunately, Torres has never really come across as a smart baseball player. His IQ, I think, on the baseball field is below average. But basically, with Torres, you got to be better at second base. You can't keep making all these freaking errors. He makes at least 1 to 2 errors, I'd say, every series the Yankees play in.
He needs a strong last couple of months if he hopes to have any hopes of getting a solid contract.
He really does. He really needs. He really needs to pick it up. I mean, this season has just been a significant disappointment for everybody, and for him especially. I mean, he was looking for that contract. He was looking for that big extension. He's not going to get it with the Yankees. So if he wants to at least get a job next year, a starting job, you better clean it up. You got to clean up your defense, because, like I said, I'm always holding myself every time a ball's hit in his direction. And
You can't have that.
yeah, I really don't know what else to add on top of that. I mean, that
There's
basically.
nothing bad on top of that, honestly.
All right.
Uh,
Well, let's shift away from the Yankees for a little bit and let's talk about some of the other moves that were made at the deadline. So, Jack Flaherty was traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Dodgers obviously needed some pitching help this season with the injuries that they've experienced. Obviously, Clayton Kershaw just came back from the injured list, although he hasn't looked good recently. He got roughed up in his last start against the Padres. That was actually the first start in his career during the regular season where he did not record a strikeout. So that wasn't good. The Dodgers have also been without Yoshinobu Yamamoto for over a month now. You don't know exactly when he's going to come back, and if he does come back, you don't know how effective he's going to be. If he does come back, they may have to move him to the bullpen,
yeah.
depending on.
Otani, obviously, they haven't had this season. This is an exclusively DH season.
Mhm.
Dustin May got hurt earlier this year. He's done for the year.
Yep.
This is, as you mentioned, Ryan, is a team in which they desperately needed starting pitching. And you can look at the two prospects that they gave up, and you can cringe and you can moan and cry and complain. I mean, one of those prospects was Trey Sweeney, who we ended up dealing.
Yeah, so we got Yorbit Vivas from the Dodgers in exchange for that trade.
Yeah, but that's basically why the Dodgers, because the Dodgers weren't a name that I was hearing with the Jack Flaherty stuff. I was hearing the Yankees and a couple of American League teams, probably the Mariners, because I mean the Mariners were just trading everybody and for everybody. But the Dodgers, like I was kind of referring to, it's a desperation move. They need a starting pitcher, and right now, Jack Flaherty. I mean, just a few years ago, he was a Cy Young caliber pitcher, and he's had injury after injury, season after season. He goes over to Detroit. He's having a solid season thus far, sub 3 ERA all this time, but yeah, like it's the injury history that I just can't shake off. I know Brian Cashman said he couldn't match the value, whatever that meant, but then you have that athletic report that comes out that basically says the Yankees were scared off by medical history, and a report that basically he may have had a couple of cortisone shots. When Nick Morgan and I talked about it on ETB Sports, we were just thinking about just in this whole season in general. But it's 2 cortisone shots within the last few weeks for his back, which, like Nick was talking about when on the most recent episode of ETB Sports, cortisone is just not something you should continuously put into the human body. So if this is 2 cortisone shots in such a recent time, that's a concern to me.
Yeah, well, like you said, the Dodgers right now are so desperate for pitching that they needed to do something at the deadline, and there weren't many options. I know that there was talk about Tariq Skubal going to a team, but
Never
I
left.
brought it up. I brought it up last week with Ben. That I didn't see the Tigers giving away Skubal. The Tigers are not far away from contending again, and Skubal's somebody who you need to build around. So I thought it would be asinine of the Tigers to give away Scooble. So, Flaherty would be their next best option to give away, and they did. Like you had mentioned, Flaherty was pursued by several teams, including the Yankees, but they were scared off by his medical records. So now the Dodgers are taking a risk here, taking Flaherty, but it's a risk that they need to take. The Dodgers obviously are going all in to win the championship this year, and they had to do something. And so Flaherty was basically the best alternative option that they had. The Dodgers also obviously acquired Michael Kopech from the White Sox. Kopech has been inconsistent really his whole major league career. I think he's more going to see more bullpen action, I'd say, rather than starting pitching action. Kopech's also obviously had injury history in the past. He's had Tommy John surgery before.
Mhm.
So, the Dodgers, obviously, their biggest priority during this deadline was to improve the starting the pitching staff. With Flaherty, it's a gamble, really. It's a flip of a coin. You're either going to get, you're either going to get a good starting pitcher, or you're going to get somebody who struggles a lot, and we'll see what happens. I think Flaherty. I mean, I really don't know what to expect with Flaherty as a Dodger. I mean, when a lot of guys, find something when they go to the Dodgers, I will say that. So maybe they unlock something inside Flaherty, and Flaherty is able to propel them to the playoffs and to the
I'm
to the pennant. But
I'm
but
just worried that late September playoff rolls around and his back's gonna give out.
that's the thing. I just don't see that happening. I don't know if I don't to be honest, if speaking from my personal opinion, I don't think this is going to work out. I was never really crazy about Flaherty to begin with. I mean, don't get me wrong, you mentioned it. He just a couple of years ago, he was a Cy Young candidate. But yeah, I never Flaherty's just never really stood out to me as a dominant pitcher. He just his injury history is not pretty to look at, and the fact that he's had cortisone shots in recent weeks, and yeah, I don't know. I think this is more of the Dodgers just saying we need to do something. We can't do nothing.
Right.
That's really what it boils down to at the end of the day.
This is to them. This and Kopech to them is the Yankees with Jazz Chisholm. It's a desperation. We got to do something. Since we're kind of all in on a World Series this year, it's like we need to make something work.
Well, they really need a lot of their guys to come back. I mean, the Dodgers have been hit with a lot of injuries this year. Obviously, the Mookie Betts injury just crushed them. They really have never been the same team since that happened. And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean that anytime you lose somebody of the caliber of Mookie Betts, that's definitely going to have a dramatic effect on your team.
And
Um,
and the Dodgers basically we kind of at least Nick and I talked about it during the offseason. They have a target on them considering all their moves from the offseason, all that money that they deferred in order to acquire Otani and Yamamoto.
yeah. So, but it's a move that needed to be made. So, regardless of how this shapes out, it was the right move from the Dodgers, if you ask me. I mean, I'm not really getting on them for not getting somebody like a Tariq Skubal or a Garrett Crochet, which is a different story, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But
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 I
yeah,
hope but yeah.
but yeah,
I hope I hope things work out for Flaherty's sake because I like Flaherty, but like you said, the last few years have kind of scared me off
I don't know.
with
I really don't see Flaherty. I don't see Flaherty. I mean, is he a free agent after this season? Remind me again.
I can double check that, but
If he's, I
I
mean,
I might assume.
if he's a free agent after this season, I don't see him coming back to the Dodgers next year. Um,
Yeah, he's on a 1 year, $5.4 million contract.
so yeah, I mean, this is just a rental basically, if you
Yep.
ask me. He's only going to be here for the rest of the regular season and into the postseason. And the Dodgers are just hoping that they can squeeze one last ounce of magic out of him to help them over the top. So we'll see
Yeah.
how it goes.
Uh, let's move on and talk about Tanner Scott because this is the one that made me upset as a Yankee fan because they have been in desperation for relief pitching. Like I said, Clay Holmes gonna Clay Holmes. It showed right after the deadline. They didn't get the job done there, and I mean Tanner Scott. I feel like is such an underrated name when we talk about relief pitching because he has done incredible. He's got, I think, 15 saves. I feel like he could have been a bullpen piece that the Yankees have. Instead, he goes to the Padres. As the Padres, also another team, that's been making moves, and I can say maybe a small winner of this deadline as they're trying to. I don't think they're gonna catch the Dodgers for for the division, but they're trying to make a little push themselves in a competitive NL West.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at Scott's stats right now. Whew, oh my God, they're beautiful to look at. What a
I
beautiful,
told you.
what a beautiful ERA, 1.18. Oh my God, I would kill for that right now. Yeah, that was the guy who I wanted the Yankees to get more than anybody at the deadline. I really wanted Tanner Scott. I thought he would be a perfect addition to the bullpen because the bullpen has just been gassed in
Mhm.
recent weeks. But the Padres scooped him up. I mean, the Padres have been really hot in recent weeks, and they made some moves at the deadline. The Padres have just made some really sneaky good moves this year. I mean, at the beginning of the year, they stole Luis Ariz away. I don't know if they stole him. I mean, the Marlins were waving the white flag in April, and they basically said, "Hey, here's Luis Ariz." And
The Marlins gave up like 30% of their roster at the deadline.
it's a never-ending cycle with the Marlins. Once again, fire sale mode. It's every other year. It's ridiculous. I hate that franchise. You have no idea.
Except the 2 years where I kind of like Secret Base's headline for their story on the Marlins. Oops, we accidentally won the World Series.
It's a never-ending cycle with them. They don't know any other way. They'll they'll have a competitive team for a few years and then fire sale. That's really it. There's no other method to them. It's the same thing every time. It's madness. So Tanner Scott, he's now on the Padres. The Padres definitely could have used some help in that bullpen. And now here they are. They have Tanner Scott. They have a legitimate, bona fide threat, bona fide closer now to help them out. They didn't really have that this season, obviously, because they lost Josh Hader. But now, they have Tanner Scott, and you look at their roster now, and you look at that, that bullpen. For the most part, it looks pretty solid. Their bullpen's been pretty good, and you throw in Tanner Scott, it only helps out. So now the Padres are a legitimate threat, not only to make the playoffs, but to win the National League West. They're not far behind the Dodgers. The Dodgers have been slumping, and the Padres have been hot. The Padres have been right on the Dodgers' tail now for a while, and we'll see if the Dodgers are able to hold them off. Personally, for me, I think the Dodgers are the Dodgers. I think they're gonna still win the division, but I mean the Padres are definitely a good team. And if to be honest with you, I think they're a better team now than they were in 2022 when they made the playoffs. And the Padres, they unloaded a lot of talent. I mean, you lose Juan Soto in the offseason. You're losing a lot of talent right then and there, but give them credit. They've had a very good year. I mean, they got off to a slow start and they were inconsistent a little bit during the summer, but now it looks like they're starting to find their identity. And I mean, bringing in Tanner Scott definitely just helps them out. And I think that's a huge game changer in the National League West. And like I said, Scott's been phenomenal. I wanted him more than anybody at the deadline, and it's like every guy who I wanted the Yankees to get, the Padres got them. So it's just been so that trend just continued with this move. So
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I wanted Scott as well. I thought that was going to help, and now we just have to deal with Clay Holmes blowing save after save now for the rest of the year.
I can't do it anymore. I can't. I have to leave the room. I have to put the TV on mute. Like my heart is racing uncontrollably every time Holmes comes onto the mound. I'm not kidding. I'm literally on the verge of having a heart attack. Holmes has probably taken 10 years off my life. Him and Chapman have really done a number on me. Honestly, I would probably take Chapman over Clay Holmes at this point. I mean, don't get me wrong. Chapman was no fun either to watch. Chapman always made it interesting, but I don't know if Chapman blew this many saves.
No, he didn't. No,
that's the thing. Holmes just have every time Holmes comes on to pitch, there's always the leadoff man is always on base. He's always on. I can't remember the last time Holmes has gotten a one. He did get a 1-2-3 inning at Fenway Park. That was a very, very rare 1-2-3 inning at Fenway that he got on.
Right, but still, the Yankees, at last I checked, have blown 5 of their last 7 save opportunities. When that is happening, then you as a team, whether it be Boone as the manager or the bullpen coach or the front office, that's when you guys got to come together and say, hey, something's not working. We got to try to switch something up.
Yeah, I mean, Judge came to Holmes. I mean, Judge is the captain. Judge is not going to, criticize any of his teammates. He's going to stick up for everybody regardless. But you just look at that, and the fact that Holmes has just been so bad over the past couple of weeks, basically, in save situations. He's just struggled so much. I mean, he leads the league in blown saves, like that right then and there. I mean. I'm sure the Yankees tried to get Scott. I'm sure they inquired about him. I'm sure they were trying to figure something out, but they just couldn't figure anything out that would have satisfied both them and the Padres. But yeah, I really don't know how much longer I can take a Clay Holmes. I mean, he's a free agent after this season, so I guess he's only going to be here for 2 more months, but they're going to be a very stressful 2 months, and
Yeah, pivotal months.
yeah, he's got to clean it up. He's got to clean it up. Gleyber's got to clean it up. As good as things have been for the Yankees, in recent days, and like I mentioned, they've won 5 in a row. They still need to clean up some of the problems on this team. It's still not, fundamentally sound baseball. And I think Tanner Scott would have been the perfect guy to, alleviate some of that stress and anxiety that us Yankee fans have been experiencing over the past month. But unfortunately, he's going to San Diego to join a bunch of other ex-Yankees who, for the most part, have had pretty good seasons. I mean, Kyle Higashioka is having the best season of his career out in San Diego. So
It's unbelievable. It's our luck. Every time they leave, they somehow manage to boost up.
although I will say I've been very pleased with what I've seen from Austin Wells this year. He's had a
Oh, of
very
course. Yeah, no. Austin Wells was going to be the catcher, and
yeah,
Torres, most likely Trevino is not going to be back after the season either, and Navarez is probably going to end up taking that backup spot.
yeah. But yeah, Tanner Scott is now on the Padres, and for the Padres, that's a big win for them. That's one of the best moves. That was one of the best guys available at the deadline, and the Padres won that sweepstakes. So they got one of the best moves at the deadline, if you ask me.
For
So
sure.
so that happens, and so now we're gonna move on. And the next topic that we are going to discuss is Garrett Crochet. Oh, brother. Oh, brother. So Garrett Crochet's name was thrown out all season long as a major trade deadline acquisition. People were saying this is the guy that teams need to pursue. If you need pitching, this is the guy to get. And I was very vocal saying that I think that the Orioles are going to land Crochet at the deadline. People were most Major League Baseball analysts were saying that he was going to go to the Dodgers. Well, we were all wrong. He's staying in Chi-Town. And the reason he's staying in Chi-Town was basically because he's saying that he wants to shut himself down once the regular season is over. He's saying that Crochet, obviously, he's coming off Tommy John surgery, and he's on an innings limit, and he doesn't want to push the envelope out a little further, and he wants to shut it down once the season is over. And when I heard that, and the thing is, the White Sox, didn't realize this until the trade deadline. Once they started trying to make moves for him, then he and his agents, made the announcement that he wants to just shut it down. And he also wanted an extension.
Yeah.
So
He said without an extension, he's not going to pitch in the postseason, which basically meant anybody who was going after him, the Orioles, the Yankees, the Dodgers, they were just like, yeah, no, thank you.
So essentially, what he was saying was, okay, I'm only pitching for the remainder of the regular season, no postseason, regardless of the status of your team, and you need to extend me. That's basically what he said.
And that's the thing that really pisses me off is that look, I get it, and I've been defensive of when I was on with you a couple weeks ago, we were talking about the history, how pitchers are just getting hurt more and more often, and I get the guy's coming off Tommy John surgery. He has the innings limit, and I get it, I get it completely, but at the same time. You could have gone. I mean, look at where you are, man. You're with the Chicago White Sox, one of the worst teams in baseball history. A team that is about to have, a sub 500 record guaranteed at the start of August. A team with a Ryan minus 229 run differential, 50 worse than whoever's 29. I think it's the Rockies at 170 or something like that. It is ridiculous. Like, people talk about the 03 Tigers. People talk about the 62 Mets. And I said this on the most recent ETV Sports. Even if they don't pass one of those two teams in terms of number of losses in a season, I feel like just by eye test, the White Sox of this year are the worst team I have ever seen in terms of talent and such. And to think at the start of this decade, they had all that talent under all that control. And we said, the White Sox could be dominant force in the AL Central for the 2020s and maybe beyond. Oops.
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head right then and there. I mean, Crochet basically has nobody to blame but himself. I don't know if he necessarily feels bad about what he did. I mean, if this is what he wanted, then fine. But
You could have gone to a World Series
that's the thing.
contender.
You're like, why wouldn't you want to go to a contender? Why wouldn't you want to pitch in the postseason? That's what baseball is all about. Your main goal should be to win the World Series. Instead, you're gonna remain with arguably the worst team in Major League Baseball history, a team that has no future whatsoever, a
A
team
team that's
that's
in dysfunction mode when you consider Crochet's feud with Getz, when you consider the manager just now mandating batting practice and running, which I didn't think you would have to mandate as a major league manager. But here we are.
so. It was astonishing, honestly. It was amazing to see that. Like, I mean, if seriously, if you're on this specific Chicago White Sox team, who wouldn't say, "Get me the hell out of here"? Who in their right mind would not say that? This team, it's August 2nd. This team already has lost 84 games. This team lost 80 games before the start of the month. That is amazing, and not in a good way at all.
No.
So I just it's it's astonishing.
I mean,
It
I'm
really
I'm
is.
gonna be honest, and Chicago White Sox fans will throw stuff at their screens and everything. Man,
And in
Ryan,
a wa- and in a way, I do feel bad for the White Sox because they could have gotten something in return that was that would have been great.
mhm.
I mean, Crochet was their strongest asset. For the deadline, he was like the one guy who had some legitimate star player level stuff or star level player stuff, I should say.
Yeah, no.
And I mean, Crochet's, his value was the highest out of anybody on that roster for the deadline.
And I get he wants an extension, but at the same time, the fact that he's not willing to pitch in the postseason, if I'm a major league general manager, I'm saying, well, that tells me you're not very confident in your
Yeah.
stuff.
So can't you just the thing is, all right, you don't have to start in the postseason. You can't pitch maybe an inning like here or
Yeah.
there. You can't do one inning in the postseason here or there. Like you can't be like a seventh inning guy or or an eighth inning guy. You can't just give
It's
us 3 outs.
ridiculous.
You can't give us 3 outs. Like, come on, dude. Like, this was your chance to shine. And he kind of flushed it down the toilet. And, as a result, he's staying in Chicago. I hope he, gets used to losing. I don't know if he's.
Like I said, like I was gonna say, Ryan, Chicago White Sox fans will throw stuff at the screen. Maybe Yankee fans will because this is kind of rooting for the Mets. I want them to break the 62 Mets. I want to see it happen.
Oh,
I
I do
want.
too. I do too. The White Sox, they all these years ago, they had all these prospects who, I mean, honestly, even as far back as like 2017 or 2016, when they were making all these trades with other teams and they were stacking up on their farm system,
Mhm.
I never really bought the idea that these prospects were elite future generation players. I looked at the names and I just, none of them really stood out to me. And I looked at their stats and like, I don't really buy the fact that I don't buy the fact that these guys are going to be superstars in the future. They
I
kind of
was
just,
trying to be hopeful and think, okay, development. But what this last couple of seasons have shown, whether it be LaRussa's stint as manager, whether it be what's going on with Getz right now, it's everywhere. The toxicity from the clubhouse right to the front office, right up top to the ownership. It's unbelievable what has happened to this franchise. That we're coming off now. We're about to enter 2 decades when they finally broke their curse and won the World Series in '05 because that '05 White Sox team was enjoyable to watch for me.
it was. And everything went perfectly for that team, basically. And it's a shame that, their World Series championship kind of gets overlooked. And, they ended a long drought between that championship and their previous championship. I mean, the previous
Mhm.
championship before 2005 was 1917. So that was an even longer curse than the curse of the Bambino that the Red Sox had. People forget that.
Yeah, it was just
And
about the same time of, in terms of timeline between World Series. So it's frustrating to see what's happened. This is, as I kind of alluded to, the days of Konerko and Brzezinski and Frank Thomas are no more.
well,
We are
they're
far
long gone.
removed from
They are
that.
long gone. This generation of White Sox is absolutely embarrassing, and it's sad to see. I don't wish a season like this upon anybody, But with the White Sox, with the way that they've conducted themselves in over the years, and just some of the nonsensical moves that they've made, bringing La Russa out of retirement, to trading away some players like Chris Sale. I mean, that Chris Sale trade, you looking back, I mean, that is one of the worst trades in White Sox history, if you
Mhm.
ask me. You got nothing in return. I mean, you got Yohan Moncada, who was an absolute bust, and like that right then and there, that's the trade that pisses me off more than anything else. Because Chris Sale's one of the best, what is one of the best pitchers in baseball. He could, I mean, I don't know if he'll be a future Hall of Famer, but he was
Right,
that
he
damn
was. He
good.
had his injuries, and now look, he's making a comeback killing in Atlanta.
He could win the Cy Young this year.
Yeah.
So yeah, that to me was the trade that just was the straw that broke the camel's back, and there was no coming back from it. And I never bought the idea that Moncada was an amazing player. He's had a hard time staying healthy, as have a lot of guys on the White Sox, like Eloy Jimenez, who eventually got dealt to the Baltimore Orioles, and Luis Robert Jr., who I think got
Or
traded.
released. He's still there.
Oh, he's still there. Oh God,
Yeah.
I thought he would have been gone.
No,
But
he remained as well, and they said, and they actually still tried to trade Crochet at deadline day and said we're not going to trade Roberts. So
mhm.
he's the one I feel bad for because he deserves a lot better than what's going on in Chicago. If they're not willing to build around him, then they may as well just deal him in the offseason.
All right. Well, yeah. Well, Crochet's gonna remain in Chi-Town, and yep. Have fun in prison, buddy. Have fun in the base. Have fun in
Have
the
fun
base.
in Loserville. I know we were going to talk about this specifically Fairbanks and Diaz, but just to go up with other, winners and losers, I'll just throw the Rays out
Yeah.
there.
Go ahead.
Uh, you know, the Rays, I feel like should have made moves. They didn't really do much. I thought Yandy Diaz was going to go to either, they talked about it, either New York or Houston or Seattle. They did nothing with him. Fairbanks, I wanted Fairbanks for our bullpen, but nobody gained there because just he didn't get dealt either. Like you mentioned, Scrubble didn't get dealt. There were guys and teams there that really should have been dealt or could have been dealt, but just weren't. And I feel like some teams kind of missed the boat. Like, I mean, the Athletics are always going to be losers, and now the Angels are losers. I don't know if you want to throw anything in there before I do that little transition point.
Um. Yeah. No, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head with everything that you just mentioned. I mean, this deadline, there weren't any names that were major game changers,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah,
ask me.
everything that could have been was before the deadline happened, really.
Yeah, I mean, Luis Arise would have been a game-changing name if he was still available at the deadline with the
Yeah.
Marlins. But that ship sailed obviously at the beginning of the year. So once that happened, then there weren't really any major prizes. For me, the biggest name was Tanner Scott. That was the name that I think that many teams should have pursued. And the Padres won that. In terms of offense, I mean, there weren't too many names that jumped out. I mean, I'm surprised Luis Rengifo didn't get dealt at this deadline. I mean, Rengifo's been tearing it up with the Angels this year. I don't really know. Man, I'm kind of surprised nobody really made a move for him.
Yeah, neither have I. But
It was
on
mostly
that,
pitchers. It was mostly pitchers that were on the move this
yeah,
deadline.
there were, like you said before, there weren't really a lot of offensive targets. It was a lot of pitching targets, and I wish Yankees got more. But I mean, I'll take Leiter, the nephew of Al
I
Leiter, and
did
we'll see.
like that move. I really thought that was a good move. You
And
know,
we'll see what happens there.
yeah,
But since we're going to bring up the Angels, I think it goes to our last topic about
yes.
why they're even worse losers than now. Mike Trout has had a setback and is going to need another surgery. His 2024 season lasts, what, a month and a half? It's over again. And my heart breaks for this man. This man has just had no luck whatsoever. This man, took that big contract. And, I was kind of against it at the time because I did not have the faith in the Angels to build around him, and I was kind of proven correct. They just have been unable to build around him, and he has just had injury after injury. And this is a guy who it should still be considered a face of baseball. But when you haven't played a full healthy season since what, 2021 or 2020
2016, I think.
or
I
2016?
actually I want to check. I want to check this out.
Yeah, but I know it's been like a 4-year stretch or 5 year stretch where he's had a season-ending injury at some point. Like 15-day IL, 60-day IL stints aside, and it's heartbreaking because they're just, on one hand, yeah, Mike Trout signed a contract with the Angels. He went after the money, and it's like you kind of assume that maybe the Angels can do something, but there's a chance that maybe he never tastes the postseason again, which goes back to what I talked about a couple weeks ago when I was on with you about guys like Trout and Otani loving the World Baseball Classic because the only chance they get to sniff anything big and significant. And on one hand, you can say Mike did it himself, signing with the Angels. On the other hand, man, if you look at the history with the Angels and their moves, losing Otani after 6 seasons and wasting him away. Albert Pujols, just not the same when he signed with them. Rendon, needless to say, if you have listened to this whole episode already, I think we've already said what we needed to say about Rendon. They have just not done anything, and now your trade value for basically Trout is nothing, which means you are stuck on that contract full time.
And unfortunately for the Angels, there really doesn't seem to be much hope for the future. And I
The
mean,
only
I was just looking at Trout's stats on Baseball Reference. He hasn't played 100 games in a season since 2022, so it's been 2 years. And that was only 119 games he played that year. The last time he played at least 140 games was 2018, which was exactly 140. He did play 134 in 2019, and he won the MVP award that year, but he really has not played a full season, like close to 162 games. He has not played a full season of that magnitude since 2016.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. And 2020 season aside, because that was a 60-game season, that was a whole convoluted mess with COVID. How many games did he play in that season, actually?
In 2020, he played 53 of the 60.
Okay, so he hasn't really done anything in terms of playing a full
Here,
season. If we're going to be very lenient since the COVID season,
I'm just going to quickly run down the past 4 seasons with him, dating
yeah,
back to 2021, the past 4 seasons of full seasons. So 20 full 162 game slates, I said, and I'm going to do
yeah.
this quick because we got to wrap it up here. 2021, he played in 36 games. 2022, he played in 119 games. Last year, he played in 82, and this year, just 29 games, the fewest he's ever played in a season in his career.
And Ryan, I hate to say it because I know we're running out of time, and this is to throw something major like this at the end of an episode, but if you're the Angels at this point with that contract, there's only one way to save it, and you got to make Mike Trout considered the dreaded R word, retirement.
Oh,
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't. I feel for Mike Trout. He's one of my favorite players. He's a class act all the way, and to see this continuously happen to him year after year, it's just heartbreaking. And don't
It's
get me wrong,
heartbreaking.
I mean,
It's heartbreaking. It affects his legacy.
it does.
It,
I
it
mean, people were saying that he could have been the greatest player of all time, but I mean, don't get me wrong. He's still gonna go into the Hall of Fame when all's said and done. But he's never gonna be compared to guys like Babe Ruth and Shohei Ohtani has
no,
surpassed him in terms of popularity and
Ryan,
stardom.
hot take, and I've said this the last couple of seasons. And maybe it's because I love this guy a lot more and always have, but I shouldn't say a lot more. But I've always loved this guy since he got on the scene. But his rookie buddy, in Bryce Harper when they came out together, I think he's starting to lose now the Bryce Harper comparisons that I would pick Harper over Trout at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately, the injuries have it's too many. He's had too many injuries. The injuries have been a major problem for him for years now.
Meanwhile, Bryce Harper's having a career renaissance at first base with the Phillies and leading them to two NLCS appearances and one
Yeah,
World Series appearance.
yeah. I think the days of calling Mike Trout the goat are over.
They
Unfortunately,
have to be.
he is. He has just become another Hall of Famer, which is an interesting term considering that you're a Hall of Famer is not necessarily a is one that is not a bad thing at all. You're
No.
one of the greatest players ever, but you're just another Hall of Famer now. You're not one of these amazing Hall of Famer who's above all the other Hall of Famers. And yeah, it's just sad and unfortunate. And
They've
yeah,
People have made comparison. He is to this baseball generation to Ken Griffey when we were kids.
mm, yeah. I mean, now I would maybe say, I mean, he's got more MVPs than Griffey does, but and both have kind of similar kind of have similarities to their careers. Both have
Right, the
dealt with
injury history, the
injuries.
talent, the five-toolness.
If these guys never had the amount of injuries that they've had, who knows what they could have achieved even greater things. Griffey could have had over 700 home runs. He could have been Major League Baseball's all-time home run king if he
Yeah.
had stayed healthy throughout his career. And
Trout could have been a 3,000 hit person already if he was
Trout, sure, he didn't have all these injuries. There's no doubt in my mind he would have reached 3,000 hits, and he would have had at least 500 home runs. But I don't know if he's going to achieve either of those numbers.
No, I
So
don't
it's
think so.
unfortunate, and it's kind of a somber way to end this episode of Hitting for the Cycle. But we're out of time here, so thank you, Tom, for joining me on this episode.
Of course.
And
I'll be back next week because you're going to be going on vacation, which I hope you enjoy.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be going to Long Beach Island for a week, so I'm looking forward to that. So tune in next week. Ben Kruse will be back. I think he's going to be joining Tom alongside me here. So yeah, I'm definitely tuned into that episode. So yeah, on behalf of Tom Albano, I'm Ryan Touhey. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Take care, all.